And it means get a roadmap out, just communicate, like be like, hey, listen, we have this in development. We're not sure if it's going to make it to the game or not. Don't do that. Okay. Don't say that uncertain things are coming, but like give players an idea of like why you don't have a roadmap. Be like, listen, we are working on a huge, complete fucking change. And they kind of have alluded to the complexity of reworking the maps, but they haven't said the reason we're not releasing content until the summer is because we're doing all of this work that you're not seeing that is going to culminate in the game being infinitely better. And if we didn't do all this work, the content wouldn't matter because you still wouldn't want to play. Like they need to acknowledge the frustration and they just need to say like, hey, this is why it's taking so long. Like really, this is the real issue. Like you see us making these map changes and you're wondering why it takes us 3 months to put fucking sandbags on a map. And I'm like, it's because we're not just putting sandbags on the map. Here's a wireframe view of the map and all of the geometry we have to change just to place that thing. And no, it's not the engine, it's the fidelity. You know what I'm saying? I'm very excited because I haven't, I had a kid 11 months ago. It didn't come out of me. It came out of my wife, but we had a child
It was
together.
right after our first show together. I pretty
Yeah.
much no. Wait, we wanted to do a show, and then you had your kid,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we were gonna do it, and then my wife went into labor like the day of.
That was the best story
So it's
ever.
been a while, but no, I haven't had a chance to really talk about the game on a sensible platform, right? Like I've talked a lot about it on Twitter. Some folks that I'm friends with on Discord have seen me talk about it, and I just haven't had time to sit down and record a video. And the big roadblock is like I am not super upset about the game. Like I have a lot of complaints, and a lot of them mirror what other players say. But I think there's a lot more going on than just the game, just DICE, just EA, whatever. And explaining all that takes a long time. So, I don't want to leave people with this impression that like I like the game and if you don't, you're wrong, blah blah blah. So like it would just take too long and I haven't had time. So this is like the perfect opportunity. So I'm very excited.
That's amazing. Can you give us a little brief intro about who are you in the Battlefield gaming community? How are you
Okay.
connected to it? So people maybe can see
So,
who you are. If you don't know
no,
you,
so
you never know.
so I'm a content creator, video editor, and producer that works with another Battlefield YouTube channel. Some of you might know who it is. I try not to associate too closely because everything's separate, whatever, blah blah blah. But um, I've been covering Battlefield for like 8 years almost at this point. Been playing since Bad Company 2. Been a huge fan of the franchise, and back when Battlefield 5 launched or was about to launch, I got invited to be part of the EA Game Changers program, and now I'm part of the EA Creators program. And despite what a lot of people think, that doesn't mean EA gets to tell me what I say about their games. I am known as the person that writes the walls of text criticizing the game to everyone else in the program. Like people, when they see me type in Discord, they're like, "Oh no, he's gonna talk." Dear God.
Why
So
do you think that? Why do you think that? That's actually
I
interesting. Why do
mean,
you think that of yourself? I don't
I'm just
think
a
they think that
very
actually.
I'm kind of long-winded. Uh, I talk a lot and I have a lot to say. And like the thing is, like, my work is my life, right? Like I spend all day, every day, basically either working or taking care of my family. And, when it comes to stuff like gaming, uh, making videos, photography, videography, etc., like these are core interests to me. Like before I was doing what I'm doing now, I was a freelance photographer for like 15 years. I was in commercial art and advertising. So there's a lot of parallels between what I used to do and what I do now. And there's just so much going on in my head about this stuff that I can't funnel it out fast enough. Um, so I guess that gives me the reputation of being someone that has a lot to say.
Um, and it's a difference if you do it also as a job. But
Yeah.
I wanted to bring it later, but I think here's a good point to actually dig into the whole topic here and point of being a content creator is a totally different thing if you look at Battlefield compared to just being a gamer
Yeah.
or being a gamer within within the Battlefield community. Like, let's say, I don't know, there are so many platoons and communities out there, right? You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. So we all have our own expectations and views on things from the needs we need, how we deal with the game itself, right? So
Yeah.
how is it different as a content creator, and how was the launch maybe a struggle or not a struggle? I don't know. I mean, everyone, maybe there are some people who actually gained from it. I don't know. How do you see it
Yeah.
from your
So
perspective?
I mean, starting from the beta with 2042, it was obvious that there was like a lot of work to be done, right? Like the game had performance issues, it was missing content, and it was really hard to judge whether those things were specific to the beta or like actual problems with development that DICE wasn't going to address in time for launch. And I think a lot of content creators and players gave DICE the benefit of the doubt because it seemed like, okay, if they fix the performance issues and there's more content in the game, then we're kind of happy, right? Like it doesn't seem like it's missing a ton. Like, yeah, there's core features like the scoreboard and all that stuff, but it's also like, how hard could that possibly be to do, right? Like, how long could it take? So as a content creator going into the launch, covering the game extensively, all that stuff. Like I was really excited because Battlefield was kind of back. The marketing was really successful. People were really engaged and excited about the game. I was excited about the game. It had a modern setting. It was like, DICE is back. Like they're doing Battlefield 4, but it's modern, blah, blah, blah. And then, the specialist thing, and people were kind of like, I don't know. And then launch happened, and like immediately as soon as like the early access like pre-order thing hit, like the wave of negativity just crashed down on everything. And I don't think it's undeserved. Like, don't get me wrong, like I am going to be saying positive things about the game throughout the night, but I don't want people to mistake that as me being like some kind of apologist or making excuses for Dicey. I have a lot of criticism for them about just launching the game before it was ready, and how clearly it wasn't ready for launch. When we, but hindsight is 2020. So, when that wave of negativity hit, it's something I've seen with other games recently, and I think there's a lot going on behind what makes people so upset about games these days. Halo Infinite's a really good example. Phenomenal game, like phenomenal. The best Halo multiplayer has been since like Halo 3. It's 343 did a fantastic job. They nailed the feel of the combat, but there's no content. The maps just aren't there. Like they don't have enough maps. The cosmetics are they take too long to grind and they don't fit the theme of the game, and there's not enough of them and they're not coming up fat. Like there's all these content flow issues. So even though the game
Also,
is really
I have
good,
a question. I have a question
yeah,
about that because you're bringing up Halo. I have a good friend of mine actually in real life, and he's absolutely Halo fan, and he plays Halo like forever. Basically, like I am a
yeah,
Battlefield fan, he's a Halo fan. And I asked him like, "What's up?" Because I don't have an Xbox, I don't have a PC, I never played Halo. I don't know that game. I would like to
yeah,
play it, but I can't. So, anyways, he told me that what's similar to Battlefield is that they also had a different developer team, and the old developers were gone and new developers came in, and they
yeah,
missed certain features which were at the core of the game. So it's
yeah,
very similar to Battlefield, right?
yeah. I
Do you see
think
that? I don't know,
no,
because I don't know that much.
there's certainly a parallel. Like there's this idea, I think, that when a franchise becomes established, right, like Halo 1 and 2 kind of set the tone for the future titles, right? Like every title's got to
Mhm.
have co-op, it's got to have Forge mode, it's got to have big team battle, it's got to have Team Slayer, it's got to have Team SWAT. Like it has to have these core set of things that define what the expectation is of a Halo title. And Battlefield's the same exact way. The everything between Battlefield 1942 and Battlefield 4 was like, this is what Battlefield is. And that evolved and changed. And, DICE expanded on some things, contracted on some, changed, like there was a lot of evolution. And then Battlefield 1 came out, and there was like major departures from the core Battlefield experience in a certain type of way. Like the weapon variety went from being you have your weapon and then you have your attachments for that weapon to you have weapon variations that are kind of predetermined and you can modify little things about them. And then Battlefield 5 went even further with that. It was like now you have these weapon specializations that aren't attachments but affect like what an attachment would, like the mag size and all that stuff. And Battlefield 5 obviously had a lot of other things that were very different about it. But then 2042, it feels like two games trying to tear each other apart, a Battlefield game and a live service game. And there was rumors that it was like initially being developed as a battle royale game. And that kind of makes sense when you like think of the like really cringy like end of round voice lines when all of the specialists or whatever are
Mhm.
like, that's just how it works out sometimes, or I'm just better than you. It's like it sounds like someone talking to a lobby of dead people that they just killed and won the match. Like it sounds like very individualistic and it doesn't fit the tone of the game. And it seems like one of those things where when you combine like the specialists and the end around voice lines and the dramatic differences in tone between the marketing and the actual game, like there's no post-apocalyptic feel to the game to a certain extent.
Hmm.
It's like you wonder like if the people that had made Battlefield 4 were still at DICE, would they have seen this stuff or even done this stuff and gone, nah, we got to change this. It's not right, like, and I think a lot of people think that with so many new people at DICE, that it's just like they don't understand what the franchise is supposed to be. They don't understand what the game is supposed to be. And to a certain extent, I get that. Like, whenever you have new people come in, it's like fresh eyes on an old idea. It changes how the product evolves, right? Like, it goes in different directions than maybe the legacy team would have done. And I think for the most part, like, 2042 is as much a Battlefield game as any Battlefield game. And I also think that we've been playing Battlefield games for like 20 plus years at this point. And if they change classes a little, it's just like I don't know. Like, if I wanted to go play a great Battlefield game right now, I have so many options. I have Battlefield 3, Bad Company 2, Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1. Like, those are all fantastic, amazing games. And there's nothing stopping anyone from going back and playing them. And they're content rich and they have an active player base and all this stuff. And I'm like, Battlefield 2042 needed to be the new best Battlefield game that everyone went out and played, right? Like that is the only way it's going to be successful. It has to be better than what came before it.
Wait,
Players
wait,
have
wait,
to
wait,
like
wait.
it.
Let's.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you here, but let's dig
No.
into exactly what you just said before we lose that. I think
Sure.
that isn't the issue here that because you said, I mean, if anyone wants to play a great Battlefield play a game, they just can go back to Battlefield 3, 4, or whatever type they prefer, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, the main issue is we don't want that. We want
No,
finally
exactly.
everyone be together on one,
No, exactly. And I
right?
think that is the
So
ultimate frustration with 2042 is that it offers portal mode, which is like it's supposed to be the destination for all Battlefield players. All out warfare mode is supposed to be like the big headline experience that attracts all the players in. And when the game runs like ass on PC, has tons of bugs, is missing content, has big departures from what came before it, it's like and I think again, like I said, there's more to it than just the game. I think there's a lot of circumstances surrounding the game, surrounding how players communicate and engage about the game. Like Reddit is the perfect example of why
Bossy.
I think Bossy's going to get me in trouble.
Yeah.
No, Reddit is a really good example of like how the conversation about stuff gets really toxic really quickly. And again, like it's not undeserved. 2042 was
Okay.
advertised as
Sorry.
like,
Sorry, man. I need to do that because I know you. You will just keep talking and we keep
yeah,
talking. But with you, I need to dig in. You always say so interesting things and then you go to the next one and the next one and the next one. Um, the connection, what you just said, back to Halo. What I found
yeah,
interesting was the point of toxicity when you go to Reddit or Instagram or Twitter, whatever. The real difference looking at Halo, same issue or similar issues, Battlefield. Battlefield can't post anything anymore. And it will be toxicity. Everything
yeah,
is toxic in every tweet they put out. So it's really difficult for them. With Halo, it's of course, they also have toxicity, but it's not that bad. Why?
Yeah, I mean, they
And
kind of traded positions in terms of toxicity. Like
oh,
Halo,
really?
when it
Is
what?
it not that bad?
Uh, no, I mean Halo is improving and Battlefield
Okay, this way.
2042's community is
Okay.
improving. It's like there's an ebb and flow to it, and I think like when Halo Infinite was when people first started having like a negative reaction to it, um, the subreddit for the game just went into panic mode. Like every other post was deeply critical of the game to the point that the moderators had to shut down posting for like 24 hours or something. And 2042 had basically the same thing happen where like, there's this initial wave of like positivity and joy about the game since it's out, and then it came crashing down and it was like overtaken by like negativity. And again, I'm gonna sound like a broken record saying this, but it's not entirely undeserved. Like there are legitimate things to be critical of, and I think there are a lot of fantastic posts on both subreddits that go into extreme detail about what people think is wrong with the game or why certain things should change. That is probably incredibly helpful to people working on these titles, but it's just so hard to find a voice for that sort of constructive criticism on a platform that essentially rewards engagement, and people like engaging with things that are controversial or sensational more than they do balanced and nuanced and straightforward. Like you could have the most expertly crafted uh, constructive feedback for any game and you post it on a subreddit and it might get, unless it's like someone really looks at it and they're like, oh, that's really cool, I'm going to give it an upvote. Like chances are some meme about like, a broken texture is going to get more upvotes. And again, it's not a bad thing. It's
Yeah.
with social media, live service games, all this stuff is like very new in a lot of ways and it's evolving and
Hmm.
people are adapting to it in interesting ways. And I think, the pandemic had a huge impact on the way people interact online because you couldn't go outside for 2 years. It was rough, and like a lot of people became streamers for the first time. A lot of people started using social media a lot more. People started pouring into Discord. Like all the numbers for all the platforms went way up during the pandemic. Like, Netflix gained like millions of subscribers. Like it's it really changed the way we converse about stuff. And like up until like Halo Infinite
How
2042.
did it change? Like, can you give us some details?
Yeah,
Where
so
are the influences like for the developers? I mean, we know a little bit about it. Do you have like more information, like in details, so we have a better picture?
I mean, I think a lot of the way that games used to be engaged with, whether it was from the general player base or like privileged people like the folks at EA or Ubisoft or Activision invites to give feedback before launch and stuff, like because all the developers do that. Um, it was a lot of it was in person. A lot of it was people would go to E3 as just a regular attendee and they would play the game, and Battlefield would have a community manager there, and like if a bunch of people were reporting the same problem, they would be like, hey man, this is important feedback that we should take back to the developers at some point. Or if like, we're having a feedback session for a game before launch, like DICE would be like, all right, what do you guys think? And if we're all saying like, hey, you should change this, that, and the other, it's not that they'll do it. Like they don't, there's no obligation to listen to the feedback. It's just that there's a huge difference between when you're sitting down in front of a person talking to them and when you're online just kind of leaving a random comment. Like there's a lot of intent and thought that gets, totally changed based on how we interact online. And that's not true for everyone. Like a lot of people, they're the exact same person as they are online as they are offline. But I think just the massive influx of people going online and finding communities to engage with about the games that they're playing really changed like where the feedback is coming from, how much of it is like because the game subreddit for any game is often like one of the bigger communities, but there's also YouTube comments and Twitter and Facebook and all these other platforms. And as more people went online to talk about games instead of like, going over a friend's house and be like, man, this game sucks. Now they're going on Reddit and be like, man, this game sucks. You know what I mean? And I think ultimately, like, the pandemic stirred up a ton of uncertainty. And especially in America, we have just a huge, like, economically and socially, we have so many issues that have happened over the past 2 years, like all the protesting and the elections and stuff. And people are just on edge. And life is kind of just beating people down right now. And it's like we live in a really strange time. And I think it's just one of those things where you have all these social media platforms attracting you know, huge amounts of new people to their platforms. And these platforms are designed for engagement. They're not designed to better your mental health or, foster positive social interaction or constructive criticism. They're designed like you say a crazy thing and then a lot of people retweet or like it.
Hmm.
And I think, like, if not to get into politics or anything, but like alt-right extremism and like the return of like neo-Nazism in like, you know, this century is kind of crazy. And it's something that has been facilitated by platforms like Facebook not shutting down, like, hate groups and stuff. And they are most some of the most popular things on these platforms are like hate groups. And it's very obvious that social media was not equipped to deal with being responsible for like society. And as more people go on it, it's a whole fucking mess. It honestly is.
I mean, okay, I mean, but what I heard of is, I get it. It slowed down the whole process. They needed more
Yeah.
time, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's understandable, but that I feel it doesn't explain how core features are missing, because
Yeah.
in the end, you should have a priority list, and if this priority list is not filled, it's simple management, then you can't go live, or you
Yeah.
can't put up, you can't give me a product.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Um, it's
it's a big
difficult.
no, it's a big part of it is that they're trying to be a live service game, right? 2042 is positioned as a live service title that is going to get content and features and updates as time goes on. It's an evolving product, all this stuff. And we've seen games launch kind of rough. Uh, Off the top of my head, I'm actually struggling to think of any. But like, Apex Legends is a good example, right? Like, it launched and it was like super successful right off the bat. And then 6 months went by and it hadn't gotten a ton of content because the developers were like, clearly, like, this is our last, like, not to, disparage Respawn or the people working there, because I think they're incredibly talented or anything, whatever. But like, it was very clearly like, okay, we've launched two Titanfall games, and while they've both been critically praised, they're commercially not nearly as successful as we were hoping they would be. We were hoping these games would be like the next Call of Duty, and while they sold probably well enough to break even or make even a little bit of profit, they're not like posting Battlefield numbers. They're not blowing the water open. And so they were like, all right, what if we did a battle royale game? That's really popular right now. We have a core group of assets that we could just throw at it with Titanfall. And we're really good developers that have a long history of making excellent multiplayer titles. Let's just see what happens. And so they developed Apex Legends, and they were like, all right, we'll make, if it's successful, we'll put more content in, like a live service thing. And then it was super successful, and they were like, oh crap, now we got to build all this stuff. Like, it was very obvious that they didn't have a year's worth of content pre-prepared for the game's live service. They definitely had ideas for maps and characters and weapons and all that stuff kind of pre-planned, but it takes time to turn those plans into reality. And
Yeah.
I think with 2042, uh, EA and Dice, when they started pre-production, we're like, all right, we're gonna do a really fucking massive game. We're gonna do 128 players. We're gonna probably have a battle royale mode, live service, tons of content, all this stuff. Huge monumental effort. Like, it is a miracle that any game makes it out the door, but it's especially a miracle when your game requires 128 players in every server. Like, there are so many things going on that make it challenging. And
Let's
so,
let's pick up the question, because you talked about Battle Royale quick, from P-Prof. He wanted to know, do you think they made a mistake by not trying a Battlefield Battle Royale in the beginning? I mean, they built these super huge maps.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really obvious that Firestorm was a failure, not because of it being a bad mode, but
Mhm.
because Battlefield 5 was incredibly unpopular at the time, and it cost $60 to play Firestorm, which was a lot of people thought was pretty decent, but had, the looting kind of sucked
Yeah,
and
it
there
should
wasn't
have
a
been
ton of weapon
free to
variety.
play. Mhm.
Yeah, it
Right?
should have been free to
Mhm.
play. And I think the same thing is true with Battlefield 2042. Like, I think one of the 3 modes that's currently available, probably All Out Warfare, should have been the free to play mode that everyone can just get, and you get like a certain amount of content with it, just like you would with Warzone or what's another game that has like a free, like Halo Infinite has like the paid campaign and they have the free multiplayer, like something that's just like there is no barrier to entry. You can get in, you can try it, you can play it, and if you want to spend money on it, you can buy the battle pass or you can buy some other aspects that get you more access. And the fact that they didn't launch with a battle royale and that Hazard Zone is so clearly like just not good. Uh, it really blows my mind when they had the perfect template, which is Firestorm. Like, just take Firestorm, change it from a fire to like the eye of a hurricane closing in on a thing. Like, there's so many things they could have
And you
done, and I
just
think,
fly you just fly out of the
yeah,
combat zone and you're gone.
yeah. And it's just
I love
like, it's just,
that.
I can't believe that they didn't think to do it because if anyone, like the thing that blows my mind about battle royales and Battlefield and the reaction to them is that if any game in any studio was equipped to deal with a large scale infantry combat mode that is also a battle royale, it is 100% dice, right?
Mhm.
Conquest is basically like every man for himself or every squad for themselves trying to capture objectives, and sometimes you get an organized thing happening and you can really push as a team, but it's a sandbox. You're like blasting jeeps across the map with C5 and C4, excuse me. You're sniping people from a mile away, like you're doing all this crazy shit. And now McKay can grapple hook onto vehicles. Like, there's all these amazing sandbox things going on, and it's like to not have that in just a battle royale mode that lets you loose is just, it's mind boggling to me. Like, I'm sure it's a factor of that's what's coming out next year or something because they're moving towards, at least before 2042 launch, they had made it clear that they were going to try and do multiple Battlefield projects coming out one after the other in some
Mhm.
capacity, whether that's like a huge expansion for 2042 or a battle royale. Like, I don't know, no one knows. They don't say anything anymore. um but yeah, like not having battle royale when you have the perfect template for one is just like,
It's weird.
because like, yeah, and like Warzone is literally a carbon copy of Firestorm in so many ways,
And
and
I
it's
mean,
like, look at how successful it
Wild
is.
Time actually is talking about that. Then they bring Hazard Zone, and he said like, "There's nothing in there that makes me feel like it. Reverse on code makes
Yeah,
him sweat more." And here's the thing: I actually I enjoyed Hazard Zone. The problem is, I mean, you can't find anyone to play with.
yeah.
But what I didn't enjoy, or I think what was a big problem, Beard, please go back. What are you doing, Beard, man? um, all right, sorry, that confused me. Hazards on. Ah, yeah. I think my biggest issue was there's no reward. You
Yeah.
go at the end, you go into this chopper and you see like extracted, and it's like,
Oh boy, I left.
thank you.
Sick.
Yeah,
No,
right.
I the funny
It's
thing is, like, a lot of
and
games that have this kind of extraction royale thing have that same problem. Like, the Cycle,
ah,
they just launched. So the Cycle came out in like 2019, and it's a free to play PvP/PvE extraction royale. Basically, you go in, you do some like PvE missions that give you credits, and the more credits you get, the higher on the scoreboard you are. And if you're at the top and you extract, you win. But it's like the only reason to keep playing is so that you can keep upgrading your gear so that you can play better. And the problem with Hazard Zone is, one, you get enough credits to be like good enough at the game to always win, like right out of the gate. And on top of that, it's like you're just playing on the multiplayer maps. And while the atmosphere is pretty cool in Hazard Zone and it has a lot of things going for it, yeah, there's no stakes. It's like, okay,
mhm.
I lost. Okay, next game I'll get like bajillion credits, and I'll have like I can get whatever gun I want, and it's so bizarre.
Is all right. Isn't there like a theme? If you look now at Battlefield 2042, you can see if you look at Hazard Zone, no scoreboard,
Yeah,
that that there. I mean, it's a shoot, repeat, kill shooter, right? No, wait, the other way around. Whatever. um, whatever. But the thing is that I think we need this kind of competition in us, right? To see,
yeah,
we want to be better, we want to evolve, we want to get good. And maybe we can, and it's not there yet. Maybe the first question for you, how do you think, what do they need to change so we get this feeling back of we want to be good at Battlefield, we want to play,
yeah.
we want to evolve?
Yeah, so the number one thing for me, and they kind of addressed it with the most recent patch, is performance. Like it's like headphones, right? Like it doesn't matter if headphones sound great. If they're uncomfortable to wear, you're not going to want to listen to them. And when a game doesn't run well, especially on PC, like I have a 3080 Ti, I have a Ryzen 3800 XT, I got 32 gigs of really fast memory. Like everything's on an SSD. Like I have what many covet in terms of a good PC these days. And yet when I play 2042 on all those settings with DLSS on like balanced mode, I get maybe 80 FPS in the 128 player modes, and my performance is definitely better in the smaller modes, but then like what's the point, And it's just like a PC like mine should be getting hundreds of FPS in a game like 2042. But in any game, I have a top of the line system, and it is so clear that there is like performance being left on the table on PC with 2042. Like it uses half of my computer's hardware basically, and that's it. And it's so frustrating to get into a match, the action starts popping off, and then my FPS drops to like sub 60 FPS, which when you're playing on PC and you're used to like 120 140 FPS, it affects how you aim with your mouse. Like you can feel the lag that it causes. And for me, that's one of the biggest problems that Battlefield games have had since like Battlefield 1 was pretty performant, but it had hitches.
Can
Battlefield
it be
5,
fixed?
oh, honestly, I think the fact that they're taking so long with the map reworks that they're doing, because they're doing Kaleidoscope is like the first map that they're gonna retrofit to be more in line with player feedback for season one. I think a big aspect of that is optimizing the maps, like shrinking them down a little, cutting out assets that aren't being utilized, removing areas that no one goes to, is all part of a
Okay,
cost
wait.
saving
How does
measure for.
removing areas, removing stuff, and also fitting new stuff in the map help the performance?
So, I mean, it
Mhm.
optimization is a huge aspect of game development that doesn't get a lot of conversation about it, because people just assume like you click the optimize button in the engine and then your asset, like for like if you have a bench, right, like you want to place it as a prop on the map, like you click the optimize button and then the engine's just like, hey, here's this perfectly optimized bench that won't cause a 20 FPS dip when players look at it, and those are like the kind of little minute problems that you have to manually solve when you're doing optimization in a game. And I'm sure a lot of people will point out that like Glassdoor reviews and past developers that have worked with Frostbite and at Dice have said like Frostbite's hard to work with or it's very complicated. And I think like that's a whole aside. Like just the sheer fidelity Dice works at would make working in any engine complicated. But taking out elements of a map, cutting out areas of a map, and then adding new stuff in. Part of that process is, okay, the new stuff we're adding, we're gonna spend time to make it more performant, make it more optimized. We're gonna restrict the like just being able to change the level geometry such that like your elevation's higher or lower. You can cut off like huge sections of the player's field of view when they're on the ground if you make the ground lower,
Mhm.
and that saves a ton of resources. So like if there's like a big hill where you can see the entire map in 360 degrees, like that is an area of the map that is going to hammer your computer or console. And if Dice can be like, what if we just put like a little dip in the terrain here
Are we just
and
not
put some
ready?
cover up?
Are we just not ready for 128 players?
I mean, it's really tough to say because I think 2042 plays really well in like conquest mode with 128 players. when it's running well and like people are coordinated. But it also doesn't feel any different from 64 players when you go back and play on it. Like the maps are just so much bigger that you're still getting sort of the same level of interactivity between players. I don't think it adds anything to the game. I don't think it takes away anything from the game aside from
Mhm.
the performance issues.
Well, but
Um,
that's what I'm talking about.
yeah, and I mean, I
That's what
think
I'm talking
that
about. I mean,
like
if that's the solution.
yeah, if the compromise is we have less players and you get better performance, I'm in favor of that because I don't think it would make a difference in how the game actually feels. I think losing 128 players now that it's been such a headline feature would be like, people would be like, they're doing a performance and that's great, but they sold it as a game with 128 players per server, and now they're taking that feature away. That's a lawsuit, bro. We got to sue. Like it would be dramatic, the reaction to something like that. And I don't think,
Honestly, I mean, don't you have to cut on one end now? I mean,
yeah,
imagine that. Just picture we have 64 as maximum for now. They can still go up if somehow they fix the issue, whatever. But I think what people would really want to see is something like close quarters. Like give
yeah,
us 16 versus 16, 32 versus 32. I mean, imagine having something like what was the maps? The close quarters maps on Battlefield 3 here.
yeah.
Damn, I forgot all the names.
Yeah,
Zebra
the
Tower?
skyscraper one. Yeah, Zeba Tower, all those maps
There
feel
were,
great.
yeah, I think if I would bring something like that, people would scream and be like so happy to have, these opportunities again. I don't, I, why not? Does
No,
there
it's really frustrating that
anything
they don't
in?
have any maps like that. Like like even in portal mode, all of the maps are sort of the legacy wide open maps from the past games. Like there's no Operation Metro, there's no Zeba Tower, like there's no infantry focused maps really in 2042 aside from like Manifest maybe, and even that's like huge map with like just tons of open space. And the crazy thing to me is like Battlefield 3, the servers run at like 10 hertz, which is really slow. So, every time someone shoots or moves in the game, that information is being sent and processed and received and transmitted at like 10 times a second, which is super slow. When you think about how fast you can kill someone in a video game, it can take less than a tenth of a second. So it when you go and play those close quarters maps or you go play Battlefield 3 today, like in general, you can feel how unresponsive the game is. When you shoot someone, the hit markers feel somewhat delayed or like you'll die around cover a lot. And those are issues that the modern Battlefield games have really solved.
Mhm.
Like since Battlefield 1 and 5, they've done a lot of work to make it so that the servers run really quickly and there's not a lot of latency and you still dive behind cover. That's a fact of online gaming. But those maps, those close quarters infantry focused maps from Battlefield 3 and 4 would play so well in 2042 because 2042, aside from its design problems and its performance issues, the networking is pretty solid. Like it's a very responsive game when you're getting good FPS. And I would love to play Zeba Tower in a game that doesn't have a 10 hertz server limitation because those maps have only ever been in Battlefield 3 and they're some of the best maps that DICE have ever made. And it would be great to have them. And like it would solve so many 2042's problems, right? Like reduce the player count, get better FPS, have more content for portal mode that is unique and different and allows for experimentation, like all that stuff. And like I always thought my feedback has been that Portal should be the featured mode for 2042. It shouldn't be all out warfare. They should be putting all of their resources into making Battlefield Portal like the thing everyone plays because it has so many options. And like if you uh, made the servers persistent and you added more content and you unlocked everything for everyone, like oh my god, it would be so good. Portal is just so limited right now.
What's what's working good for you in Portland? What's not? Actually,
So
wanted to talk about something different, right? The content. There was a content question, but yeah, what would bring players back? But maybe that's actually, I mean, it falls into the same thing.
yeah, I
So
mean it's just marketing and content. Like honestly, like if 2042's marketing is proof of anything, it's that DICE can launch a game that everyone hates and then come out with trailers and marketing for a new game that everyone loves. It doesn't mean that the game's going to be good or not, but like 2042's marketing was some of the most successful marketing in Battlefield history. It was
You
delivering
think
on what.
marketing can fix it right now?
No,
Really?
I don't think marketing can fix the game itself, but I think in terms of player sentiment, like if DICE tomorrow, let's say, was like, all right, here's the roadmap for season one's content. We're gonna have these maps, it's coming out on this day, it's gonna have these new guns, all this stuff. And they released a really good trailer and a really good like blog post series from the community managers that really went into detail and explained how the game is changing and what's coming. It would do a lot to improve how people talk about the game and how people interact. And like, you know, people want to know good things, right? Like they don't want to go online and see a constant stream of negativity. And so when there's a constant stream of negativity around the game and there's no sort of like counter to it from the developers that is positive, like, hey, I know everyone's saying this stuff sucks and we agree and we're sorry for it, but here's the deal. We got this roadmap and it's got all the dates and all the content when it's coming out, blah, blah, blah. Here's this awesome trailer that really demonstrates why this content is worth coming back to the game for, and then they actually release it. That's the
That
thing. It's like you can have the best trail in the world and you get people super excited. And as 2042 is the perfect example of, when the game doesn't live up to the expectations set by that marketing, it doesn't matter if the marketing's incredible or not, people are going to stop playing.
I read this book. I can't remember the title right now, but it was about how to change toxicity within a community on some point. And it wasn't about marketing, that book. And what I found interesting was that sentence. It was basically, if you have a toxic community, don't try to change their minds and argue, try to change their emotions.
Yeah.
And I love that because I think this is the main point right now. It's very difficult because it's so emotional.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can change it through giving us skins or which are broken.
Yeah.
um,
No, I mean, that is like one of the biggest problems I've had in talking about the game is that because I'm not super emotional about it, I I like I can just kind of sit back and say whatever I want, and it doesn't come from a place of like frustration or like
mhm,
as a content creator, and this gets back to what we were talking about with the like different expectations that people have based on the different things that they do. uh, as a content creator, I have to watch out for any game that might seem interesting to people, which means I'm always, reading reviews and researching other games to play in different genres and styles of game to play. And my backlog on Steam, like right now, I'm going through the Batman Arkham games because I played Arkham Knight after thinking it would be terrible since because all the reviews were really negative when it came out. And it
mhm,
was fucking amazing, and I love it. And now I'm going back and playing all of the games again. And there are just so many games pulling my attention away from games that aren't living up to my expectations that like I give my constructive feedback, I follow it to see when it'll improve. But other than that, like I said, like I am a diehard Battlefield fan and I am absolutely gutted and devastated that 2042 didn't meet expectations. But at the same time, I'm not going to beat myself up about it over however long it takes DICE to fix it for. I'm just gonna go play other games, and that sends a huge message to DICE like, hey, you're losing players. Like live service games are all about retention, so when you leave, that's like, oh, that's a red flag for the developers. Like, hey, we're doing something wrong
yeah.
because they optimize the game for retention. And you know, that's the experience of your average player, like a person that goes to work and they come home and they play games for a couple hours, is going to be completely different from my perspective and expectations and all that stuff because they want to play Battlefield. That's the game that they're coming home to play every night. And when it's not a good experience or it's not something they enjoy, it's hugely problematic because there is no alternative, right? Like what other game out right now is like Battlefield? World War III? I mean, kinda, but it's like an indie game and it's still janky and doesn't it has the same sort of lack of content issue.
Mhm.
Uh,
It's difficult.
yeah, like Squad. Squad is an incredible game, but it's not on consoles and it's a mill sim. And it's one of the most approachable ones. You can't just hop into that game and have the Battlefield moments, right? Like you can't hop into the game and end up on a flag and there's like 60 dudes that you can see right in front of you. Like In Squad, you hop into a game, you get onto an objective area, and you get sniped by some dude with an AK from like 300 yards away in a bush, and that's like, and then you got to like build the fob with the little shovel, and you got to get the resources, and it's like all this micromanagement. And Battlefield is just like,
Sounds
hey,
like work.
yeah, it sounds like work. And Battlefield's like, hey, you can be super technical and tactical, or you
Mhm.
can put C5 on a Jeep and drive it into a tank and blow it the fuck up. Like, and there is no other game out right now that does that sort of sandboxy, large scale infantry combat game style.
Are you a
And
fan of McKay?
I'm I am some of the specialists, like I think it's really frustrating seeing people hate the specialists so much, because while I don't like that there isn't sort of a sense of rigid structure to each character, like, you know, they're all kind of
Mhm.
the same. They just have like one thing that makes them different. I love the grapple hook. I think it's a great addition. And like Battlefield Hardline had one and everyone
Mhm.
liked it in that. And I think the grapple hook, especially now that it can latch on
I
the
love it.
vehicles, it's so cool. It's fun. Like maybe it's unbalanced, maybe it creates a situation where you die where you never expected someone to be there. Like I get that frustration, but at the same time I'm like, I don't get,
It
it's
gives
not.
us so much more opportunities. I mean,
Yes.
that's the whole thing about. I feel the whole balancing topic. I mean, clearly there is some balancing issues still. You know, like on breakthrough,
Yeah.
for example, air vehicles should be gone. I think there are some issues, but
Breakthrough is
still,
just not a good mode. Like that's the biggest problem with that mode. It's just not fun to play. It's not fun to, you've spent all this time fighting over an objective to capture it, and then you got to go capture the other one. So everyone leaves, and then it gets. It's just, that's why Rush works, because you blow the thing up, and then it's blown up, and there's no going back. So the enemy team, like, you know what I mean?
you didn't like it on Battlefield 5.
No, no, I didn't like. I haven't liked
I kind of
the.
got used to it. It took a while for me, but I got used to it and I actually enjoyed it. I think for me, Breakthrough has another issue on Battlefield 2042. Breakthrough on 2042 is not the same as on Battlefield 5.
Oh yeah, no,
And
it's totally different.
so I think it's really difficult right now to first to compare both of them.
Yeah.
Because it clearly doesn't work right now, but the question is, why doesn't it work? I mean, you clearly don't like the game mode, so you probably don't even care. You just want other game modes back.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I mean, I think the mode design of 2042 is one of its biggest problems that no one's talking about. Like, uh, you
let's
know, there
go
are so
into that.
many,
That's a big one. That's good. Let's do
yeah,
that. Map design.
there's so many legacy modes from Battlefield's history that had maps really tailored for them, right? Like Bad Company 2, Rush was its bread and butter. It had maps specifically designed for Rush that only worked well on Rush. And it made the Rush experience, because it was so tailored, incredibly enjoyable for players, right? Like everyone loved playing Rush in Bad Company 2 because it was designed for Rush. And Battlefield 3, the maps were really well designed for conquest. There was a lot of positioning and maneuvering that you could do to capture flags from the enemy without it turning into just the team going around the map in a circle. There was always like a flow of or a sense of direction to the flow of players through the map, even though it's like kind of a sandboxy open mode. And like, you know, again, Rush in Battlefield 3 was like amazing. And like Frontlines in Battlefield 1, it's kind of like Breakthrough, but it's better in that it condenses the combat into like a really specific zone of combat, and there's a back and forth to it. It's not, you have to make progress and then you go forward. It's, you make progress and then the enemy team can fight you back, and who wins is determined by who gets the farthest, right? And I don't think it's necessarily a great mode. Like I would obviously wish, you know, make Rush great again, blah blah blah. But 2042's problem is like it's got conquest, and that's like the sandbox mode, and it's got breakthrough, and that's the objective oriented focused mode. But it's just so, the vehicle spam's nuts. The areas that you fight over don't provide cover for actually getting to those areas. So you know, you have all this combat happening in a really condensed area, and then you'll have groups of players surrounding that area preventing anyone from getting to it, and it makes it like you spawn, you run 20 feet towards an objective, you don't get to the cover area fast enough, and you get taken out by a vehicle or a sniper, and it's just like a repeat process over and over and over. And, you know, like, I don't think Breakthrough is a bad mode. I just think that as it's currently designed, it doesn't really offer that level of engagement that players are used to from Rush or, Operations even. Uh, and that's like a
I think
huge problem with 2042.
the cool thing about Rush for me was that you really could make a difference as one player.
Yes.
Like you could join, like I mean, if my friends weren't on and I had to join, a random game for a couple of rounds, I still could have fun because I
Yeah.
could do these flanks. I could put a spawn beacon, behind the enemy. I could arm the objective by myself, and then my team could push up, whatever it is. But I could make a difference if I wanted to.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean,
And
in Breakthrough,
and
it's like, what are you
I
going to do?
miss
Like, oh,
that.
dude, I spawned and I killed 3 people and then I died. And then we did that for 25 minutes and my team lost. It was so yeah, you're totally right. Like when I go back and play the old Battlefield games, I played Rush, I play Conquest, I play the classic modes, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I as a player that is very experience with the game knows like, okay, I can get to the MCOM with this
Mhm.
helicopter and then I can bail out the helicopter, put C4 on the helicopter, blow it up, create a distraction. And then I can go to the MCOM and arm that motherfucker and then I can put more C4 on that. So when the enemy team comes and starts flooding the objective, I blow them the fuck up. And I alone was responsible for that fucking thing blowing the fuck up and us winning. And it's like only in Battlefield is a marketing term, right? Like DICE created only in Battlefield to sell Battlefield 4. Like they saw Battlefield 3 had these moments where players would do shit that was like amazing, and they would be like, "Oh, that's that only happens in Battlefield." That's a whole ad campaign, and
And that
so
yeah, and
that
why
doesn't
don't they
happen
push
in
for it? Why
2042.
don't they why don't yeah, and even more, why don't they support it? Like I really don't understand the attitude of creating all this engagement, especially also with content creators, with the community. They worked so
Yeah,
hard on it and they did a good job. And then they don't have these tools set up to integrate the community and like I mean the biggest events right now going are thrown by the community, right?
yeah,
and and I feel like DICE is watching, and I mean they like to see it, that's all good, and now even developers are joining some of these events, that's amazing, it's all great, but I feel there's missing something. I feel there should be something, some tools. They had it in Battlefield 5, they did these screenshot events, right? They were even
yeah.
talking about implementing, like why don't they implement the VP photographer? Okay, they can because they don't even have a spectator mode. It doesn't make sense again, but
Yeah,
it's I feel they're missing out. They're missing out on let the ship go, give us the
yeah.
tools, and people would be excited to do so and dig in and help out and help this ship going. But there's just no in what do you say, like what's the word?
There's no
Incentive?
engagement with the community. Yeah, there's no incentive. There's no engagement from DICE with the community to make these things happen. Like the irony of Portal is that it is the most comprehensive and powerful custom server tool DICE has ever created for a Battlefield game. And yet we can't host persistent servers and there's no spectate client. So you can't have a tournament. You can't broadcast an event. You can't go into a server that you set up with really particular parameters and shoot a machinima or a film. Like I can't go shoot a channel intro in 2042 unless I'm okay with like just first person me running
I
a
remember the tweet after the launch of the game where you showed other content creators how to shoot images so you have a clean thumbnail.
yeah. Yeah, when you turn the UI off and you hit T. Yeah, you
That's how
can't.
desperate you become, and that
No,
can't be.
totally.
I mean, why do we have to work on, like, they're making it so hard to produce even content. Like even if you had content to produce, they make it even more difficult. And
Yeah. No, it's very frustrating. And like, there's this confluence of things happening all at once that is just so incredibly unnerving because Portal, incredible. No way to utilize it for anything other than just I want to play this kind of mode in Battlefield tonight. Uh, no spectate client. There's no ability for players to create their own modes where they can place objectives in Battlefield Portal or All Out Warfare maps or whatever, where it's like, okay, if I want to make Rush, but I don't like these MCOM placements because they're unbalanced, like I can just pick this one up and put it in a different place on the map, and then that's my custom server. Like there's no ability to do that. And players have been asking for DICE to embrace the competitive community and give them the tools and the support and have tournaments that are officially hosted. And I don't know what the roadblock is, because obviously 2042, between Portal and the quality of the assets that they're using, like all these things are like screaming like, hey, make the game really good, give the community tools to, foster a competitive scene for it, and then host an official tournament with like a prize pool. I don't know what the roadblock is to that, because it's so obvious that they could do it. But I think a big part of why there's so many like what ifs about the game right now is that the pandemic and leaks and player response have had a massive impact on EA and DICE's long-term plan for the game. Like I said earlier, they had these huge ambitions for this game, and then the pandemic hit. And, it's hard to remember now, but if you think back to when the pandemic first started, there was so much uncertainty about like how long it was going to last, what the impact was, how you were going to do your job from home. And Sweden, and again, I'm not trying to be an apologist. I want to preface this by saying I am not. This is not like me, like, oh, Dice is just, you got to be nice to them. No, you don't. They released a half-baked game, and they should have known better. But,
Is it
like,
about nice or not nice? Honestly, I don't even
I don't
understand the
know.
discussion about nice or not nice. Look, if so, if you want to, if you, Alex, choose to, you can be critical or
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
Honestly, I mean,
yeah, and
nobody
it
should
just blows
judge
my mind.
anyone for
Yeah, don't judge
anything,
people for
honestly.
their opinion. Like, you can agree or disagree. It's fine. And like, but like the thing with the pandemic is that Dice is a Swedish game developer, and Sweden's COVID policy has been from day one, I don't know, just figure it out for yourself. Like, they have no mandates. They had a really slow vaccine rollout. Uh, they encouraged people to make up their own mind about working from home or not. And EA and DICE obviously decided like immediately, like everyone's working from home. But you know what kind of a logistical nightmare it is? Essentially taking all of the resources of a studio that is in a centralized location and distributing them to your entire workforce, and then not knowing how long you have to do that for. So you're like, okay, do we give everyone like crappy laptops because they're only going to be out of the office for like 2 weeks, or
Exactly.
do we give them like these badass PCs that can run the game at like insane frame rates because they're going to be home for 2 years? We don't know. Oh, what's that? NVIDIA doesn't have any GPUs they can give us for new workstations because we bought all of ours before the pandemic, and now they've completely run out because everyone needs them. Like, there are all of these sort of logistical things alone that just make it such a fucking nightmare. Like, I would be homeless right now, basically, if I hadn't changed my entire career path
Mhm.
because of the pandemic. Like, basically, like, I was working as a full-time freelance commercial photographer. I was shooting weddings. I was doing all this stuff, and the pandemic hit. And right before that happened, I got a job offer to go full time with video editing. And it's like work from home, it's remote. So I said, yeah, I would like a
Hey.
change in pace, whatever. And then the pandemic happened, and I was like, dude, if I hadn't taken this job, I would have I would have no income. I would have been broke.
Yeah.
And it's like you take that and that's like a microcosmic example of the clusterfuck that is moving hundreds and hundreds of people out of the office and having them still be able to do their job. And I think ultimately like it's proof that like offices they're like not good. Like, people shouldn't have to work in an office if they don't need to. And I think that whole situation, combined with the fact that DICE could not do anything without it leaking, and the player reaction to the game when it launched, EA and DICE were like, all right, look, we fucked up internally. Like, they had that call that leaker Tom Henderson made an article about, where he was saying like, they compared uh Battlefield 2042's failure to Halo's success, like it overshadowed the game, blah blah blah. And that's not really what they said, but they basically admitted in that conversation to employees that like they had made a bad executive decision to launch the game in the state that they did. The words they used, the nuance that they used to sugarcoat that for their investors, because obviously it would leak. With notwithstanding, it's very obvious that they were like, we as the leaders of this company fucked up and told you to put the game out too early and our bad, bro. And it's just like they're very clearly pumping the brakes, taking in as much feedback as they can, and trying to act on it, right? And the thing that gives me hope, and this is like the only thing giving me hope, is that in every past Battlefield game, the post launch support for like the first 6 months has been dog water. Like TTK 2.0, Battlefield 4's networking taking a year to fix, Battlefield 1's balance issues still being problematic to this day. Like there are so many things about the past Battlefield games and the way they were supported after launch that were just like so incredibly frustrating. And every patch for 2042 has been a step forward. It hasn't fixed everything. Some of them have introduced new problems or balance issues, but it's like there's no TTK 2.0 update. There's no, hey, we completely fucked up this whole thing about the game, and it's going to take us 3 months to undo that fuck up. And in the meantime, like, here's a skin. Because they did that with Battlefield 5 like 3 or 4 times, as far as I can remember. And like, it's such a complete 180 from DICE's previous way of supporting their games, where it seems like the Battlefield 2042 team that's working on the game currently has a clear and cohesive vision for how they want to execute on updates. Like there's no, because like the big thing with TTK 2.0 was that one of the lead designers at DICE had this idea that the armor system in Firestorm should also be in regular multiplayer, and that having that armor system in there would function like the TTK change that they tried doing. Like it was like they were like, okay, well let's argue about this internally and not come to a cohesive decision. So let's
He's not at
split the
DICE anymore,
difference.
right? He's not
No,
there
he's
anymore,
gone.
right? Yeah,
He
yeah, he's
left.
gone. Yeah.
And you know, so they were like, okay, instead of doing the armor system and doing it the right way and rebalancing all the weapons, let's just make this guy happy and raise the TTK across the board. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying, like, as an outward observer, it seems like, the lead designer wanted to do things. There was a lot of resistance internally, and it would have worked if he got in his way or there was team cohesion, but there wasn't. And so what we got was TTK 2.0. And there hasn't been that sort of like DICE is split down the middle on a thing that they're trying to change, and they're going with the worst possible way of doing it. Like it seems like, oh, specialists need to be reworked. Okay, data mines have shown that they're making a combat medic class or something, and it's like that sounds like what Battlefield players are asking for. They want more clearly defined roles for the specialists that make them more like classes and less like one-man armies with like infinite med crates. Uh, that recent
Um,
Battlefield Friends episode hit hard, but
I got to roll back a little bit because you talked a little bit. I have only one question actually here, also from the community,
mm-hmm.
about because you talked about the comp scene. Have you watched on Battlefield 1 or 5 anything from the comp side? And do you see do you see there any future? Do you see it's worth to invest in any type of comp? And what would you like to see? I think was a question.
So I obviously, as someone that follows gaming news for a living, I see a lot of what goes on in the esports scene and a lot of what makes esports games work or not, right? Uh, Battlefield without rush mode or without some objective mode that serves as a key focal point for players and viewers to focus on just doesn't work. If like I've watched Battlefield 5 competitive events because a lot of my peers in the content creator space were hosting them and commentating on them, and they were really fun, and they were like, focus modes. Like it was like 8v8 or 12v12 or 16v16 rush with like one vehicle per team, and it was fun because it was like, okay, these players are on this team and they're going to this objective, and once they blow that up, that's like the win or loss. Like it's a very binary thing. And every major competitive game that's been successful has had like a binary win-lose state that's very obvious and easy to follow. And 2042 doesn't have, unless they use like rush mode from Portal, like it doesn't really have that. And then there's no spectator client, all this stuff. And it's like, I 100% think it's worth investing in, especially for a live service game where like the the game being a household name is what helps make it more successful and profitable. Esports is a great way to get into people's homes, on people's Twitch feeds, you know, with the game, like an official capacity that doesn't require the marketing department create like tons of trailers and stuff and like spend all this money on like, 2 minutes of footage that advertises a new feature. Like it's such an easy way to generate content about the game in an official capacity, basically for free. The players do all the hard work, and I think it's worthwhile. But I don't know, the fact that Dice and EA haven't done it already just makes me question everything. Like, why not? Get the game in a really playable state, make season one an absolute banger, win people back, which I don't think they can do in full capacity. Like, they've done so much damage with the launch of this game that there's no way it's going to have 100,000 concurrent players just because they added some maps. This is a long term thing. They're going to have to support this game for years to earn back that sort of trust. But
you
as
know
far
what?
as competitive goes,
Let's dig into that. I think this is an important more point. First off, we
yeah,
could talk about what is on your priority list to dig Battlefield out of its misery. Second,
yeah,
second, sorry, we had now a question I think by P Prof actually, and I think that was very interesting. And it's yeah, it's very specific. Do people want skins? How about something meaningful for winning rounds, or what and kind of playstyle and teamwork? And I think what we could talk is like, how do you get players back? How can you
yeah,
get them to invest in the game? Because I think in the end, these both two things are connected.
absolutely. Like, as far as like what would redeem the game and what I think it needs to dig itself out of the hole, it needs more content. It needs all of its bugs and like major issues sorted out so that they're not like repeat occurrences for players every night they go on and play. They need to fix the matchmaking system, especially for people in low player population areas, so that it will prioritize putting everyone in servers with each other rather than creating new servers that are full of AI bots, hoping that they'll fill up with players. Because I know people on the west coast of America that they can't queue for breakthrough matches without every match being full of bots. And it's like, you live in America, one of the game's biggest player populations, and it's like you can't get a breakthrough match. And meanwhile, I on the East Coast have absolutely no problem getting mostly full matches in any mode. And it's like there is very clearly something going on with the matchmaking, but that's like a minor thing. But like really, it's content, performance, bug fixes, and then reworking the maps that are already there to align with what players have been saying. Put more cover, get rid of all the open space, thematically update the maps so that they fit the tone of the post-apocalyptic climate change destruction narrative that the game has. uh you know Put some graffiti, put a bunch of debris all over the place, blow up some fucking buildings, add destruction in a meaningful way. And those are things they can do, in part, like kind of, if they go back and rework the maps. But future maps, they can really do that sort of thing. Like going back and fixing a map takes forever because you got to like rework the whole thing. But if you start with the objective of creating a map that fulfills X, Y, and Z things, like lots of destruction, post-apocalyptic look and feel, all that stuff, it gets
Okay, but
people.
listen.
Yeah,
How long do they need to create one map? And I think it's about. I think I heard in an interview before that one map depends on how big it is, could take 1 to 2 years.
yeah. So there's a really wide range, and people love blaming it on Frostbite, but I think it's mostly that if you look at the maps that Dice makes, every texture is photorealistic. Every asset is like expertly modeled and very realistically modeled. And doing work at that level of fidelity when you don't already have the assets in hand takes forever. It takes like 11 months to make a detailed Battlefield 5 map. So God knows how long it takes for 2042. But the thing is, in Battlefield 1's life cycle, they released a night map. I'm gonna butcher the name. It's like Pre-Tau or something. The and it took like a team of mappers like 6 weeks or something, or 6 months, like not even. It was basically, they measured it in weeks rather than months to build that map. Maybe not the finished
Level
version, but
Knight,
like yeah, Nevil Knights, like,
Level Knights.
but it was because they they had the assets from building the rest of the game already in hand, and they're like, let's just take those assets and throw them on a new level. And so with 2042, it's like the things players are asking for are things that I don't think players realize what they're asking for, because you're essentially asking for a different art style, high fidelity destruction and environments, uh, new cover in areas that didn't have cover, all this stuff. Like you're asking for a lot of things, like brutal expectations, right? But at the same time, it's like that's what the game is supposed to be. And so there's like no excuse. And I think it's much easier to fulfill those expectations by making new content, and reworking existing maps is kind of like secondary to that. Like you can make Kaleidoscope fun to play, but the time and resources it would take to make it also look like a post-apocalyptic climate change devastated war-torn map is going to be way more than let's just start from scratch with that in mind and make that map happen, because you have to go back and replace all of the ground textures on Kaleidoscope with like a bunch of new ones. And it's like, okay, well, we just have the apocalyptic texture pack, and we just make the game with it, or make the map from it scratch with them. And it's like there's just so much involved in map design. And again, people love to point out the issue is frostbite, but I really think it's either they don't have the tools developed to make maps quickly, or that they work at such a high level of fidelity that creating new assets just takes forever, because that's how it takes. Go download Unity or Unreal Engine and see how long it takes you to make a donut following a tutorial. It'll take you a week to make like a poorly modeled, like semi-realistic looking donut, unless you use Blender, and then it'll take you a day. But it takes forever. And the biggest question I think people have is how long is too long? You know, how long can DICE push new content out to where they hit a point of no return, where there's no winning players back no matter how good the content is? And ultimately, like I don't know how long that is. Like this summer is too long. Season 1 launching in June, if it launches in June, is too long. That's content that should have been out in January, in February. Like it should have already happened. And like we've talked about a lot, there's so many factors that went into DICE pumping the brakes and EA pumping the brakes and focusing on the bigger issues with the game, that it's led to all these delays. And I genuinely think like Battlefield 2042 is never going to fully recover to its like launch peak numbers. But if they come out with an excellent trailer or excellent marketing campaign with detailed information coming out of the development team through blogs and developer vlogs and all sorts of media content, and it has lots of content, multiple big scale maps that are really fitting the tone of the narrative that they're trying to push with the game, the big specialist rework, more
You
weapons,
know,
all this stuff. It would make a world of difference no matter how long out it takes. Like if it, obviously if it's not until like out, if it's not out until like the holidays, that's a huge problem, because no one's going to be left playing it by then for sure.
I see the problem, but I'm not sure about the time thing. If we're
Yeah.
talking about bringing us new content, at this point, I don't think it matters anymore. I think to get
Yeah.
people back, you have to show real change, that the game is fixed first. And
Yeah.
and best case, what I would like to see is they keep bringing these updates, they keep changing basically, or fixing the bugs and the core changes. Like for example, last Friday I played with the Cloud Community event from Logan the Bowler,
Hmm.
and I played singly by myself, and I just joined a squad, and then I tried to switch. I was live streaming. I tried to switch the squad, it didn't let me. Then I
Yeah.
figured out, okay, it doesn't let me because probably the squads are all full. And then two game developers actually joined my squad by accident. And then we
Yeah.
had a wonderful round together. It was so much fun. I didn't talk to them, but they were really good team player. It was really fun. We had a lot of fun. But after that round, it switched me to another squad. And I was like,
Yep.
and then I couldn't switch back, and I was like, "Why? What's going on?" And it was every round it's the same issue. And I thought, like, okay, matchmaking doesn't work. You get switched to a different squad. You can't even pick it. And I
Yeah.
feel if they could bring, and these are for me, these are like little things, but significant. They are significant for me.
No, they're
And if I could,
huge.
yeah, and if they could if they could fix all these things, including performance issues, and then bring on top, like hopefully July or something, good content that is balanced and worked out, then I'm happy to wait. Personally, this is for
Yeah.
me personally, right? And for me, that would be enough because I just want to see they learned and they try to fix it and they actually manage to do it. If they now push again for another release that is half ready just because they feel they need to push something out, I don't think that works either. Do you?
Yeah. No, they need to take their time. Like that's been DICE's biggest problem since like Battlefield 3 launched. They don't take their time. And Battlefield 1 was the last time where they really took their time and developed a competent game for launch day that was fully featured, content rich, etc. And like, yeah, Battlefield 1 is the most successful game, so I think it says something about what happens when DICE takes their time and really commits to a launch. But I totally agree. They have to fix the fundamentals. Like CS:GO is the perfect example, right? Like CS:GO, it has like the same core map pool that it's had for 20 years. The pros have been playing this Dust 2 since forever, since 1999 or whenever it came out. And the thing that keeps players coming back to CS:GO isn't, I mean, it's partly skins, it's partly, new additions to the game, but it's mostly that CS:GO is an incredible experience. You open that game, you launch that game, you can get into a party with your friends easily. You can play any mode you want easily. You can get into competitive or casual matchmaking options quickly. Once you're in, it's basically a bug-free experience. Like I know there's cheaters and there are bugs in CS:GO that like Valve needs to fix and still haven't fixed after years. But when you compare the experience of playing CS:GO with your friends to playing Battlefield 2042 with your friends, there's basically no party system in Battlefield 2042. There's no squad management in 2042. Uh, if one of your friends crashes, you all have to basically leave the server you're playing on because your squad will automatically get filled with other players, and there's no way for the game to kick people based on their party affiliation, right? So if you're in a party with your friends, you have 4 friends, you're all in a group together, one of them drops out, the game will automatically fill that slot with a random player, and it won't give a player in your party priority over that player and switch you guys around. So you can't even half the time join the game because it's trying to put you in a party that's full, even if the server still has slots open. Like there are so many levels of fuckery to just getting into a match with your friends in 2042 that it's like it doesn't matter if they made a great map. If I can't queue up specifically for that map with my friends without losing the party, why would I want to play? Like it's so not fun. And Battlefield 4 had like the same problem where you would get into a server and the party system wouldn't work. So you couldn't invite your friends to the game for some reason. And then the game would crash because it was super unstable. And so you'd all have to rejoin and you'd have to find a new server because the party system doesn't work. So you have to manually join each other. And it's like,
Remember on Battlefield 4, I think they still have this squad join system, but nobody uses it
yeah,
because it's not
you
working
can't, it doesn't
till
work.
today.
It,
It doesn't
it
work.
literally
You
doesn't work.
you always set your own system. Like, yeah, join through the party, or no, yeah, you have to click on my profile and then go in my
Yeah.
game or something. It was really complicated sometimes. Yeah, I remember that. It
Yeah.
always.
And like,
How can that be? Okay, explain it to me, like a dumb person. How can that be so complicated to
so, I mean, there's a
create a
lot of
system
factors.
that is easy?
Yeah. There's a lot of factors in how matchmaking and party systems work. Like you have to keep in mind that like the if your game is cross-platform, it really complicates things, right? Because you have to deal
Yeah,
with
of course.
players on Xbox going through Xbox's network. You have to deal with PlayStation players going on PlayStation's network. PC, are they using Origin or are they using Steam or Epic Game Store? And they all have their own infrastructure for managing how players even appear online and connect to the internet through their services. So when you try and combine them, it's like trying to send pieces of mail to people all over the world, and no one in those countries that you're sending the mail to speaks the same language. So the mailmen have to be the translators. And it's really challenging to do that right. The thing is, I think the reason it's so hard for DICE in particular is that they use Origin, they use their own matchmaking system basically. And so when they go to the Epic Game Store or they go to the PlayStation Network and say, hey, we need to put these two players on different platforms together in the same party, they are having to figure out how the PlayStation Network works. They have to go back and forth with Sony, get documentation on the API, build a translation layer for Battlefield's matchmaking system that says, okay, when you search for a PlayStation Network user, you have to do all these, jump through all these hoops to get them in with another player. Like there's all this shit that has to happen perfectly, and if it doesn't, it just you end up in a fail state. And I don't think it's excusable that that's still a fucking problem. Like, it's been a problem in Battlefield games since Battlefield 3, basically, and it's inexcusable that it's still a problem today. And I think the biggest issue is that they don't use Steamworks, which is Valve's server hosting platform for Steam, obviously. And developers that use it, it's like you get the Steam server browser, you get the Steam matchmaking options by default. And it's just like you drop it and you go. And it's like,
It's actually interesting because listen, people says like doesn't COD use their own platform also?
Yeah, so
yes, but they have also issues.
Yeah, they have tons of issues. I have tried playing Warzone with my friends over the multiple times over the past couple of years, and it's like we'll have someone's game will crash and they'll have to rejoin, but you can't join a match in progress, obviously. We'll have issues where like I send an invite, but did I send it to your Activision account or your Steam account or your Call of Duty account? Like there's so many different accounts.
I can't join. I always can push the join button. Like it doesn't let me. Yeah, restart your menu. That's our fix. We always everyone has to restart the menu and then it works.
Yeah, basically any game that doesn't have a centralized matchmaking system that's universal for all platforms has these issues. And I think it is one of the most fundamental problems that game developers need to solve for the future. And I think the fact that Battlefield 2042 servers dissolve after every match is evidence that rather than fixing the party problem, they're like, what if we just made it so that like the matchmaking automatically does everything for you and everyone just plays on their own? Like, I'm not saying that's what DICE specifically is saying, because I don't want people to take my words and be like, oh, he's saying that's yeah, it's like, because again, live service games are all about retention. And one of the big problems with past Battlefield games was that you would get servers that became one-sided. And unless your server was running a custom balancing script or DICE's auto balancer kicked in, that server stayed one-sided until everyone left, which might not be ever. And so they solve a huge retention issue for the players that are getting dominated on that server by making it so that server gets ejected from the matchmaking system and replaced with a new one in between every round. And then DICE's matchmaking can go, okay, we have this group of players. Let's use score-based matchmaking to ensure an even distribution of skill across all the players in the server. And boom, you have a new server. Like, how many matches have you had in 2042 that are absolutely lopsided? It's probably not that many. It's not like Breakthrough. Obviously, it's more of a balance issue that the attackers rarely win on certain maps. But like in Conquest, like my games are always relatively close. I'm always relatively high on the scoreboard, and it's kind of like a good experience until I try to play with my friends. And I think there's just a huge priority on retention and fixing the retention issue more than accommodating the 5% of players in the world that actually use party systems. Because let's be real, like most people don't play with their friends. Most people are just hitting matchmake. And that's why Battle Royale was so successful, because you're playing by yourself most of the time. Like I don't have friends that are up at 2 a.m. playing Battle. Well, actually, my friends are fucking idiots. They are up that late. But the point is, like, it's about retention. And I think it's just most developers think what we have now for party systems is adequate, and that they're focused more on providing a good live service retention oriented matchmaking system.
What do you think about server browser? I can't even talk anymore. Server browser versus matchmaking. Then I had the feeling like you think matchmaking is enough for us, or did I misunderstand?
No. I think Level Cap actually put out a video this past week or the week before talking about how this is a huge problem for Battlefield 2042, where there's no way to select matches in progress, right? There's no way to go into in all out warfare mode, at least, to go into a server browser and see what maps are available, see what modes are available, and see what has like an active player count, and just join that. Like, there's no way to say, I don't want to play Kaleidoscope, I want to play Hourglass or Manifest, and queue specifically for that. And it doesn't have to be a server browser. Like, I think server browsers are really powerful tools, but I don't think they're necessary when your game isn't about that customized experience. Like, Portal is its own mode, so it needs a server browser. But for All Out Warfare, I would like the CS:GO way of doing it, where you select the maps that you want from a list of options. You can have your friends queued up with you or not, and you hit go. And when you do that, it looks for servers that are populated with those particular maps, and it throws you into those matches. Um, and right now, what 2042 does, it just says, okay, this player wants to play the game, finds random server that has some players in it, boom, you're playing. It doesn't take into account what map you just played. It doesn't take into account your party getting split up in the last match somehow. Like, it doesn't take those things into account, and that's like the nuance that their system lacks that it really needs. It just needs a way. Like, it doesn't necessarily need a server browser, but it 100% needs a way for players to just
I
find the
think it
map they
does.
want to play.
I think
I
it
like
does. I
for Portal, I
disagree.
think it's essential, and I think they kind of delivered on it. But like,
Hmm.
I think a server browser wouldn't really work for All Out Warfare, just because every match gets dissolved after the round ends, which is it's an infrastructure thing, right? Like, they design it on
I mean,
purpose so that
okay, then two things. Maybe there's another solution. Maybe the solution could be you have a matchmaking system in All Out Warfare, and All Out Warfare gets more options like TDM, domination, whatever it is.
yeah,
But then again, you have Portal, where you have a server browser and you can actually look for whatever you want to look for. And for me, it was really, I was thinking about, yeah, you can see if there are bots on, right? On
no, you
matchmaking, of course not.
not in
But on
matchmaking, but
the
in Portal,
on
I think in
Port
Portal you can.
on Portal you can, right? I was thinking. I'm not sure anymore. But guys in chat, help us. Can you see on Portal if you can
Yeah,
see the bots actually if you join a server?
no, I mean,
Because
I
I was
think
just I was just thinking. Sorry, I was just thinking. We had the podcast the other year before. I think in July, and we talked about everything with Flagfire, Neon, and everyone. And there we had actually exactly this point that everyone feared, like, um, I mean, what if I don't want to play with bots? And I feel like this is still a
yeah,
thing where people feel like lost. Like, give me the opportunity. I mean, we don't have enough people as well, but it
yeah.
feels like, what can we do there? Can we do something
So
there?
the Shia LaBeouf meme where he's like this, and he's like, do it, right? Portal is this. It is just it's right there. You have the thing.
Yeah.
You want a server browser, you want no bot matches, you want all out warfare size modes. It, it's in the Portal is there. The problem
Hmm.
with Portal is when the player that hosts the server dies in real life, which God forbid, or just stops playing the game for the day, their
Hmm.
server goes poof. So then it's not there anymore. And if they made Portal the featured mode, and they were like, All Out Warfare is our free to play mode that anyone can play, and it's just 120 players, you get these 6 or whatever specialists, blah blah blah. Have fun. There's a battle pass for it. If they were like, Portal is now the focus of this game, it would solve so many core complaints. You would have your server browser. You would be able to filter out bot matches. You'd be able to pick the map you actually want to play. Like, it has all of those tools already. It's just the problem is all of the servers people are creating are like uh, a regular mode, regular map rotation, regular rules, or zombies with everyone has a knife and you move at half speed, and if you want to reload you have to jump 17 times. Like, there is no in between of like, hey, squad rush matches are a thing now,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that is like the big problem with Portal, is that there's just no, they got this, but they can't do it. Just do it.
Do you think making a service too complicated? There should be like a something which is similar more to the options you had on Battlefield 4 in making servers, which is like
Yeah, they need like a. I appreciate the depth of Portal's server creation tools, but at the same time, if your goal is to come home and play a few matches of Rush on Bad Company 2 maps, it takes like a good 5 minutes to properly configure the server to do that. And I think basically what Dice needs
5.
to do is,
Yeah.
yeah, Dice needs to take the featured modes they've created that are popular and
Mhm.
populate a list of preset options that recreate those featured modes so that when you go into Portal, you have the option of like, I just want to do, you know, a completely custom thing. Or I remember there was this, like infantry mode that was like infantry only conquest on like 32 players on specific maps that Dice added as a featured highlight mode or whatever. I just want to click that button and then the server's ready to go. They definitely need a faster way of doing things. And again, like it is so Portal is so powerful. It is like people were making like flight training modes where the AI soldiers were like in a ring that you flew through and you got points for flying through the ring successfully. Like the fact that Portal enables that kind of insanity is it's impressive. And it's just there's roadblocks to making it accessible. Like it's powerful, but it's inaccessible. And then on top of that, you have all of the issues that prevent a large player population from utilizing it, right? Like persistent servers and focus. Like right now, if you go open Battlefield 2042, the before you get into any of the menus, the first thing you're presented with is all Out Warfare, Warzone, Hazard Zone, and Portal. Portal is the last one on the far right. And in English speaking countries, which is a huge portion of the game's player population, we read from left to right. So you think either the middle one or the first one on the left is like the primary mode that you're supposed to play. And then Portal's all the way over there. It's like a UI issue almost. Like it's all the way over there and it's the mode. And I think they really need to make it like, hey, Portal bar at the top, right? There's a bar that goes across the whole thing, and it's like Portal, legacy experiences or Portal, like some sort of advertising for Portal that's like attractive. And then you have your All Out Warfare button, and you have your Hazard Zone button, which is grayed out because they canceled it and they're making a proper battle royale. That's a pipe dream. Obviously, I don't know if it's happening, but they really need to make Portal more of a focus because the featured modes are some of the best Battlefield I've ever played. I played the other night with some friends of mine, and it was like 1942 Conquest versus like Battlefield 4 soldiers. And it was fucking awesome, dude. Like I had a rocket launcher and there was helicopters and I was a World War II soldier shooting a Panzerfaust, excuse me. Or I don't my German accent's bad. Uh
Panzerfaust.
Panzerfaust at
Mhm.
a fucking like a Black Hawk, dude. And
Mhm.
it's like it's exactly what Battlefield is all about. It's the sandbox experience where anything can happen, but only in Battlefield. And I had the best time.
I love actually that they give these feature change modes all the time. I think that's a good feature actually. I like that. It's a good idea. But I think also there should be again an opportunity to include the community to say, hey, you could be one of these featured modes,
Yeah. No,
right?
totally.
Bring
It
it
doesn't
on, you
feel like
know?
there's a back and forth. Yeah. There's
Hmm.
Dice has their featured modes and players say we like this or we don't like this, or they go on player population. And that's kind of it. There's no what it doesn't seem like there's someone at Dice going on the server browser every morning and going, man, what are players making? Uh, it seems like they're like, hey, mode designers at Dice, what are you cooking up this week that we can throw at the game? And I don't think it's bad necessarily that they're like making most of the modes themselves, but there's definitely community modes. Like, imagine if Jack Frags was like, "Hey guys, remember how when the game launched, there was like that core that was a trailer that was like, hey, we got like uh, Redacted made the EOD bot versus tank thing, and you had what's his name? The big Call of Duty YouTuber that they got. I forget what it's Courage.
Nick or Courage. Yeah,
Yeah, Courage had a
possibly.
mode like VPI Fiesta or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, remember how Dice was doing that? Jack Frag's Squad Rush Battlefield 3 maps. It's a thing now. You can go play the official map, and if you use creator code Jack Frags, you'll get 10% off a Battlefield 3 custom skin or something. Like, there is so much opportunity to create that like bullshit marketing hype live service dynamic that Dice is just
Mm-hmm.
either left on the table for when they're in a position to actually deliver it properly, which is thumbs up, or they're just not even considering it, which is like, as someone that kind of dislikes live service, I appreciate that like maybe they're more focused on just delivering content for free and hoping people pay for skins at some point. But it's like, dude, they could solve so many problems by just reaching out to the community and being like, hey, we want to get players interested in the game. What are the portal modes that you'd like to see in the game? And then we'll put that mode on the main menu so that people know, like, hey, this is a thing you can play and it's fun. Because like
Mm-hmm.
that's like a huge problem too, is like to see what modes are really popping in Portal, you have to launch the game, click the Portal tab, look at the featured modes, or go into the server browser. Like there's so many steps with All Out Warfare. It's you click on All Out Warfare, then you click Conquest, and you're gone. And that's kind of it. And Portal needs that thing where it's like, hey, this week's featured mode is, Last Man Standing from Battlefield 5. Boom, you click that, and it's like one click and you're in. And it's just so much like, I understand that it's not a one-to-one recreation of the legacy Battlefield games in Portal. Like I get that there's a lot of technical things that are tied to 2042 that make them feel different. But in terms of depth of content, there's way more maps in Portal. There's way more weapons in Portal. There's way more classes that you guys like in Portal. And it's like
Honestly,
sitting there.
what I don't know how you feel about it. I want to ask you because how I can't get warm with when I join on Portal, let's say what what is it, Bad Company 2 server or whatever, something of the old maps. And then you have 7 guns or
Yeah.
something, right?
I hate that so much.
Yeah, I can't I
No,
can't. I can't I think I will never get warm with that. It's like
yeah, they really need to
why?
just
It's
they need to. I mean, obviously, there's like, you can set up a server so that it includes more options for weaponry and stuff, but they really need a mode that's like, here's all of the weapons in the game, like across all of the different legacy games, 2042's weapon selection. Here's everything. And there's like no restrictions, no limitations. You can have your primary, your secondary, blah, blah, blah. It saves the attachments. Like they need that kind of mode where it's like, when you click that button, you know what experience you're going to get. And a big reason that Dice went away from custom servers for a long time was because players would complain that when they click a server, they don't always know what's going to happen, right? They don't know if it's going to have inflated ticket count, or if certain weapons are going to be disabled, or if they're going to get kicked for using certain weapons. Like there were all these
mhm.
unknowns. And so
Yeah.
they tried solving it with RSP and with really limited server tools. And then veteran players like me and you and
Mhm.
the competitive guys were like, hey, listen, we don't have a server browser, so that kind of sucks. And Des was like, okay, what if we just gave you everything? But not really, because Portal still has weird limitations. Like you can't have 2042 soldiers with Battlefield 3 weapons in a 1942 map. Like there's certain combinations you have to stick to. And it's like, for in terms of, and then on top of that, accessibility is really challenging. So it's like a,
I think the biggest thing is really usability. If they
yeah.
manage to make it usable, so I like listen, for me, I hardly have the time right now to play anymore. I just have a really busy life. So for me,
Mhm.
it's really important. I have to switch on and I have to use every second I can to actually play and enjoy the game because I probably have like 1 hour or something or one and a
Yep.
half, you know? And so I can't make a server. I mean, okay, besides that, making a server, filling it up takes time, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, every second counts. And I think many people feel like that today, you
Yeah.
know? So usability, I think, is a really, really big thing. And also, I mean, in the end, it's about I should be about how can we help people have fun with a few clicks? And if it's just joining a server with your
Yeah.
friends, it doesn't even have to be creating a server, just finding the right server and join it. And I remember, how would you actually, that's maybe a question. By the way, guys in chat, we have only like 15 minutes now. We have to wrap up actually the podcast because Alexei has to go. So if you have any last question or you think we missed anything today, maybe you should just bring it up now in chat. I saw a few questions before, and I'm sorry I didn't pick it up, but it's sometimes it's just difficult to put it in, into the conversation. But I read everything, and thank you so much, everyone, for really bringing all these amazing questions and your thoughts in here. It's a really great conversation here, also with you guys in the chat. I see everything here, so thank you. So back to that thing. I lost my thought. What was my question?
You're talking about like
Um,
making it usable and people having limited time to play
Yeah, back to
games.
Battlefield 4, right? What I did a lot, and I wanted to ask, like, how did you guys, also maybe in chat, how did you search for games? Because on Battlefield 4, for example, a lot of times I looked, actually, there was an option you could see who was on the server. So
Yeah.
sometimes I even, because I played a lot of Rush Hardcore, that's a very small community that time. And so you knew whose server are good and which server are not good, which server are good. And you know also, like, oh, there's a good player. I joined this server. This is fun, right? So, and I
Yeah.
miss that. I miss the feeling of, I have seen this dude,
Yeah.
he's good or whatever, because it gives this kind of, you I mean, you're not playing against bots, right? You're playing
Yeah.
against people.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
the old Battlefield games fostered a sense of community simply by the fact that there was name recognition associated with servers, right? Like, AOD Clan had their Battlefield 4 servers, and if you joined one of their servers, you knew that the cheaters would get kicked, issues would be resolved, squads would be get
mhm,
shuffled around. Like, you knew certain things were going to happen because when you logged on for your hour or two every night, and you happened across one of those servers, you got familiar with it and then you saved it to your favorites. And like there's none of that flow of like uh recognition, like name recognition with 2042. And that's like a huge problem. And the way I used to find servers, and I still to this day find servers for Battlefield 4, is basically I pick the mode I want to play, I pick the maps I want to play, and I look for the most populated server.
mhm.
And then
Yeah,
I
I did
go
that a lot
from
too.
like, yeah, and then I go from like what has a good ping, and then which one is run by a clan. That like the
Mhm.
big thing is like which one is
The
actually going to
rules.
have community moderation,
Mhm,
and that's like 3 servers. You know, today. Back then it was a lot, and I think the biggest problem with 2042 is that it doesn't have enough players to support that heavy level of filtration, right? Like really specific uh, mode selection and map selection that like will support like the random group of like 3,000 players that get on at 9 p.m. at night and have an hour to play and want to play Rush on Battlefield 3's maps, right? If they don't have 3,000 players in the entire world, which I think the Steam player count is a really poor reflection of Battlefield's total player count because it's on like 8 different platforms. Like
mhm,
Steam's not the biggest platform, but when there aren't enough players to even matchmake into the core modes, it's like, yeah, you could totally have that experience where you go on Battlefield Portal and the AOD clan has their Portal servers up and they have Rush Hardcore, but those servers don't get populated because everyone's playing All Out Warfare and there's no players left over going to Portal. And I think if they solve the issues that we've talked about tonight, they add more content to the game and they get a healthy player base behind the game, then they can feature Portal as the premier mode and they can have that experience of the legacy Battlefield games where you got on, you hopped on the server browser, you found exactly what you were looking for, you hit go and you got it. And that's like the biggest problem with 2042 for me as like a hardcore Battlefield player is like if I want to play a specific thing on a specific map in a specific way, that either has to be what DICE already offers, or I have to, you know, give Jesus the wheel with a Portal browser, server browser, and hope that someone has created that mode and it's popular because I don't have time to make it. I don't have the energy to make a mode. And if it's not already popular, there's no one going to be playing it because there's no players. And it's like they get players back. Portal mode can be the thing that everyone wants 2042 to be. It can be the all-out warfare mode. It can be the only in Battlefield moments server generating moment. You know, like it can be so many different things, and it just needs like more players, persistent servers, and the other tweaks that we've talked about.
I think I have a good big small big last question for you. Where do you see Battlefield in 3 years?
So for the viewers that don't know, EA and DICE collectively put Battlefield under completely new management in December of last year. They brought in Vince Zampella, and I think they promoted Laura Melee to like a huge position at EA. She's like one of the most powerful women in gaming right now, which I know gender distinctions are dumb, Alex. Everyone it should be a whatever. She got a really key promotion, and she's one of the people that has been really central to I think EA's success in the long term. But they put the studio under new, not the studio but the franchise under new leadership. Like Vince Zampella is the head of Battlefield at this point. Marcus Leto is an executive leader on the Battlefield narrative team at this point, and he's the guy that designed Master Chief's armor. And everyone loves him, but that's kind of like his biggest contribution. So I don't really know, but you know, he's the things he says on Twitter are things that people like hearing. So I think people are excited for his involvement, and I think they're going to come in. Obviously, they can't do it right now. Like you know, before 2042 launch, they brought in the guy that basically spearheaded Warzone's production. I think they're going to take this new leadership team and they're going to be like, you need to resuscitate Battlefield for the modern era. DICE did it with 2042. That was their attempt. How do we fix the situation so that Battlefield is a household name again in a good way? And I think what's going to ultimately happen is that you're going to get the Battlefield. You're going to get a Battlefield battle royale mode, like the big like Warzone style mode that integrates through Portal with legacy content. And I think basically you're going to have Battlefield Portal, and it's going to be a much more refined, maybe restricted, streamlined experience. That's like a premium product, and then you're going to have Battlefield Battle Royale or like whatever live service featured mode is popular. And I think it's going to be Battle Royale. Maybe it'll be like an Extraction Royale, like Hazard Zone, but better. And I think ultimately it's really on the marketing and the content to deliver on expectations and attract players. Because like I don't like live service games in for a lot of reasons. Like I think they're very beneficial for developers, but as someone that worked in commercial art and advertising for basically my entire adult life, I will be the first person to tell you that the entire narrative focus of Apex Legends is a marketing tactic designed specifically to create emotional engagement between players in the game to make those players more likely to buy skins. Period. They have a narrative team. The narrative team loves their job. They love that they get to create a story, like a real actual story for their game. But there's no Apex single player mode. There's no Apex story mode. And that's specifically because doing that sort of thing is a huge time and money investment that might not work. But if they take a fraction of that money and a fraction of those resources and they put it into making really good trailers for the game that have all these characters and storylines, they can make way more money on the back end by engaging players in the live service, cosmetics, and you know, battle passes and all that content. And so for me, like live service has really become about retention, about marketing, all this stuff that kind of distracts from the actual game. And I think Battlefield is at a unique point in time where players are starting to realize what live service games actually are. They're marketing campaigns for the game that drip feed content and gameplay elements over time to keep you satisfied. Like the big reason Halo Infinite had a falling out with players is because they lack the content. Even though the core game is fantastic, they lack the content to keep players engaged in the long term. And players were like, this is bullshit, dude. Like, there's not enough skins. It takes too long to grind, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's a sign that players in general are starting to wake up to the reality that live service games are essentially like going to a casino and gambling with your time and attention. And I think EA and DICE can recognize that player sentiment towards live service games is starting to shift and capitalize on it by uh, offering a premium, content rich, feature complete experience from day one that integrates with their free to play live service title. Because that's exactly what Call of Duty is doing. Call of Duty has realized that you need both. You need the premium, content rich experience, and you need the free to play casino, amusement park attraction, whatever you want to call it. And I think Battlefield is in a very good position to be like the next Apex Legends or the next Warzone, where they're like, hey, we have this feature rich thing and blah, blah, blah. And we have the free to play, blah, blah, blah. So there's no barrier to entry and you get the Battlefield experience you're looking for. The big question
Does the
is,
Battlefield community be more open for change?
uh, no, I mean, Specialist is
Yeah,
very
because
clearly like,
no, because I mean, you're saying like we are going into more into the whole storytelling thing, and yes, we are. I mean, clearly, when you see the marketing, it was a storytelling thing. It's just not.
yeah,
I think it's not yet. It's not there yet that it's believable
yeah,
because the context doesn't fit. Like you have these soldiers who throw sentences to you that don't make sense, and etc. etc. And then
yeah,
people here in chat is, for example, saying like, "Hey, Battlefield has always felt like a nameless soldier sort of thing." So
yeah,
this makes it really difficult to implement a completely new um the specialist system and everything. This feeling around it, the marketing campaign. Um, I I don't know how to fix the story, if you know what I mean. How do
yeah. I
we
mean,
how do we fix the narrative? How do we, because it's about trust, and if you don't trust the whole game, how can you trust the story that they try to tell you? It's weird.
yeah.
I don't know if you
No,
know understand
there's
me what I mean.
No, totally. There is a big difference between creating characters that your players inhabit and essentially rewrite the script of that character in real time, right? Like there's a lot of games like Battlefield is really well known for like you have a generic soldier and like like the Battlefield friends like their videos are like an encapsulation of the wacky comedic sort of narratively driven stuff that the Battlefield soldiers in games have always said, like, "Oh, I'm getting my shit fucking pushed in over here, bro." Like, there are these wacky voice lines that have always been part of Battlefield. But the thing is, the players had agency over their character, basically. Like, they had agency over how their character reacted to situations through gameplay because there wasn't like a huge emphasis on characterization through narrative. And in 2042, they did the exact opposite, which is where the player inhabits the character on a very superficial level, and the character decides the tone of how the player engages with the game, right? Like if you want to play as a snarky, uh, you know, do good or know it all guy, you play as McKay. If you want to play as a grizzled Russian security officer, you play as Boris. If you want to play as a douchebag, no face having motherfucker, you play as Casper. There are these sort of predefined narrative roles that DICE have selected for players to fill. And they do this because someone out there is really fucking into Sundance. They're like, Sundance's backstory is really cool. I really connect with this character. And it makes that player really likely to buy a skin for when they add a Sundance skin
Mhm.
down the line. And that's cool. Like, I think it's cool to give players a really concrete and well realized character that they can latch onto and embody and have like a really cyclical or symbiotic relationship with, where it's like, having representation of someone that looks like you and acts like you in a game is really fun. Like that's why we customize our characters, because we want them to be a reflection of our personality. But the problem with Battlefield is like their writing wasn't good. Like the voice lines don't fit the tone of the game. They're not interesting voice lines. Like you remember Lawbreakers? Cliffy B's last game had the same fucking problem. That
Mhm.
half the characters would say shit like hashtag you're dead, bro, when you got a kill. But the game is set in like the year 3000 when like why would we still like, they're like, narratively, it doesn't make sense to use today's terminology and douchebag,
And
stuff.
also there's
And
another thing. If you play Weverse, for example, or Call of Duty, I actually don't play the big bird. I only play Weverse sometimes. But if you
yeah,
listen, sometimes they're saying something if you have random kills, right?
yeah,
And they're saying actually these kinds of sentences, but they're saying it in game when you kill
yeah,
somebody. And it actually makes me sigh sometimes because it's really funny what they say. So
yeah. I love it.
I
I
think
love
maybe
when you
that
get the death comms
I think the timing is maybe I'm not wait, death comes, you're talking about what other people say when you kill them, right?
when you kill them. I love that
That's
stuff, and
no,
I know
yeah,
the characters
that's
have
also cool.
like,
That's
yeah,
also
I
cool,
know the
but that's
characters in
not
Warzone have things that they say
ex
like as characters.
yeah,
But
that's
like
also
they fit
cool.
the game. It's Call of Duty. It's
Exactly.
supposed to be wackadoodle. Like it's not supposed
Exactly.
to be climate change has ruined the earth and now you're an unaffiliated soldier fighting for fucking to restore valor to your fallen nation. It's like at the end of a Battlefield match, these motherfuckers should like they should be doing the thing that the intro VO sets up, right? Like if you're going to discarded, right? And the VO sets up this thing like there is a secret thing inside this beached carrier ship that the other people are trying to secure, and if you don't, it's going to fuck up our chances of winning the overall conflict. And then at the end of the match, what it should be is a screen or a series of like, animated cinematics where it shows your characters actually doing the thing, like securing the area, taking care of
And that's
hostages
enough.
or something, and it's not in there. And it's like it's such a small little tweak, right? It's such a small thing to just make a
Mhm.
cinematic that renders in engine so it has all the cosmetics and whatever, and just be like,
Yeah.
hey, those data drives you're supposed to secure on the kaleidoscope map from the disinformation center at the center of the map. What the fuck? Players don't know what that means because the game doesn't show you it. It doesn't,
Mhm.
and instead at the end of the game you get, well, that was something, right? Oh, enjoy these moments when they come. And it's like these motherfuckers should be like, I have secured the objective, sir. Where do I go next? And
I
it's
think
like,
I think it just doesn't fit the action and the emotion and the timing. I think these
yeah,
three things don't come together right now. That's why I brought the example with Weavers because they
yeah,
bring these sentences I don't know, it just fits more. It's like your character is alive while you did something and you have a reaction. There
yeah,
it's just randomly running to you and giving you these sentences which are out of context, basically.
yeah.
And this out of context feeling, this is what I have a lot in this game. It feels like stuff is out of place or in place and it's out of context.
Battlefield out of context is exactly the perfect description for 2042 because it has all the features of legacy games. Like now it has a
Mhm.
scoreboard, but it has like, it has Battlefield 3 maps and Bad Company 2 weapons. It has all out warfare mode and a battle royale kind of experience, but it's all completely devoid of context relative to each
Mhm.
other. And like, I think a lot of people, they say Battlefield has to be this, it has to be a certain way. And
Mhm.
so I don't. Yeah, I definitely don't agree with that because every Battlefield game is a dramatic departure from the other ones, which may or may not be good. I don't know, but like you can have characters with goofy voice lines in a Battlefield game, but the game has to be goofy too, right? Like when
Mhm.
you have a super serious, dour, dark, and despairing premise for your game, which is climate change ruined the earth and nations fell, so we're soldiers of fortune going around the world trying to rebuild. And then you get into the map and it looks like a shopping mall that just closed for the day. It creates a huge disconnect and it makes people realize this is a live service game that's trying to sell you on a premise and it's not working because there's no context, there's no connection. And
Mhm.
that's a big part of why people are so mad about the game. Isn't just because on a technical level and a content level it's severely lacking. It's because the 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 curtain in front of the Wizard of Oz has fallen, and it's a game developer holding a roll of duct tape in one hand and a wad of bubble gum in the other, and trying to stick all this shit together for you, and it doesn't work. And it's like the worst thing you can do as an amusement park ride is show people how they're being amused, and that's what 2042 does when it
Hmm.
doesn't work.
Now you have to be happy.
Yeah, don't be sad. That's just how it works out sometimes.
Right? Right? Hey man, it was such a pleasure talking to you. I know you have to go. We're a little bit over time already because probably
It's
you
all
have
good.
family. Yeah, yeah, it's good. It's good. No, well, I think it was good. I think we had a good conversation. I don't know about you guys in chat, but thank you so much all for being here. I hope you really enjoyed this conversation, and certainly learned something today. So thank you for that. For Tim, it was really good to have you back here, man. I
I'm
always love
glad
to
to be
talk to you.
here. I'm
Always
so
love to
happy to
talk
be
to
here
you.
because, like I said, I don't have time to talk about this stuff on my own. And it's great to have an audience that can hear what I'm saying and understand, like, Twitter's a bad platform for criticism. And that's where I've done a lot of my criticism of the game. So people have a very contrived impression of my views on the game. And it was fantastic to just be able to be like, look, I know the game sucks in certain ways. I just have feelings about other things that aren't the same as yours, and it's we can all hate the game together in different ways and still be constructive. Like, it's great. It's great. It's been great being able to do this.
That's good. I mean, the best thing is if you have a guest who enjoyed us being enjoys being here. So, no, but really, I think it was important that we do it. I was very insecure about talking about Battlefield because I feel like we had this big update, but what's coming next? But I feel um, it is important to talk about because we there are so many things we still don't know and we won't know. We probably look back in 2 years and say like, ah, this is what
Yeah,
happened.
yeah.
But
I mean, the
it's
leakers
also
and data mine.
exciting. I'm excited
Yeah, I
actually. I'm
mean,
excited how it ends, the
yeah,
story.
yeah. Leading into update 4, I could not have been less interested in playing 2042 in the long term. Like, I was like, there's no content. Dice isn't acting quickly on big things that I want to see fixed, like the mouse input issue I was having. Everyone was having this issue where the mouse input felt terrible on PC since launch, and
Mhm.
Dice hadn't communicated or even acknowledged that it was a problem ever. And then update 4.0 comes out, and lo and behold, there's this huge fix for mouse input, which may or may not have fixed it according to who you ask. But for me, it feels much better. And I'm like, it's not even in the patch notes. And I'm like, the fact that there's all of these undocumented changes that are so positive, I was like, it
Mhm.
got me excited for, like, oh, what else, what other little nuggets of change have they implemented that didn't get advertised that, like, are good for the
Right?
game? And
Mhm.
I'm like, listen, now they just got to get the content rolling out and keep the updates coming so that the game is more and more stable and more performant. I'm like,
Honestly, I
I'm
think
getting
it was
excited.
it was good that they left out that they changed their mouse input thingy or whatever they changed there. But I think it
Yeah.
was good that they left it out because if they would have mentioned they changed anything about it, the expectations have been there again, like, yeah, yeah, they fixed it or whatever. And then they were again like, it's not really fixed.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, players obviously will figure out if something's wrong with the game on their own. Like, they will experiment and they will investigate on their own. But like I said, like, going into update 4, I couldn't have been less excited. And coming out
mhm,
of update 4, I'm not, it's not like I'm like completely like 180. But like, I've even seen it on the game subreddit where, like, the posts now are about, like, hey, this update was kind of good. And I had this moment, dude, where I like blew
mhm,
up a tank and it looked cool. Here's like my clip. And like the comments are like, yeah, the game kind of still sucks, but cool clip, bro. Instead of like, hey, this game
mhm,
fucking sucks. Specialists are cancer, and I hope everyone dies. Because that was a huge portion of the like. And again,
mhm.
the people on the subreddit, I know that doesn't reflect everyone there, and that the people actually making posts there are a minority of you that are actually active on it. But again, it was so popular and prevalent, and it's like just the single update has radically shifted a lot of the way people talk, and I'm like,
Yes. Yes.
there's still so much to be done, but I'm glad that Dice are going in the right direction.
Yes. I think if they now can figure out how to get out of their rabbit hole point of communication, that would be nice to see.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think
that
that
was
would be
my
really nice
feedback.
to see.
That's
Hmm?
been my feedback recently, like internally. Like, I'll send a message to a community manager, and I'm like, here's the thing: the fact that Temporeal and Tom Henderson have more to say about what's coming to the game than you do is your biggest problem right now. You need to resolve this issue. and it means get a roadmap out, just communicate, like be like, hey, listen, we have this in development. We're not sure if it's going to make it to the game or not. Don't do that. Okay, don't say that uncertain things are coming, but like give players an idea of like
Mhm.
why you don't have a roadmap. Be like, listen, we are working on a huge complete fucking change, and they kind of have alluded to the complexity of reworking the maps, but they haven't said the reason we're not releasing content until the summer is because we're doing all of this work that you're not seeing that is going to culminate in the game being infinitely better. And if we didn't do all this work, the content wouldn't matter because you still wouldn't want to play. Like they need to acknowledge the frustration, and they just need to say like, hey, this is why it's taking so long. Like really, this is the real issue. Like you see us making these map changes and you're wondering why it takes us 3 months to put fucking sandbags on a map. And I'm like, it's because we're not just putting sandbags on the map. Here's a wireframe view of the map and all of the geometry we have to change just to place that thing. And no, it's not the engine, it's the fidelity. You know what I'm
I
saying?
think I have the feeling the the main issue is that I have the feeling it's all about legal issues in the end. And I
Yeah. I
and
the
I
qu- the
have the feeling, I don't know, then have a fund for these cases, but please do more communication. I don't know.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know?
other games don't have this problem, and that's my big takeaway. Is
Ah,
like when
okay.
Squad or Rainbow Six Siege or Insurgency Sandstorm are working on a thing. They say, "Hey, we're working on a big thing, and it'll come out in 6 months, maybe." And then if it gets delayed, it gets delayed. Whatever. You know, they're very communicative about stuff like PUBG for the first 2 years. As much as I hate that game now, the developers were like every week we're like, hey, you know how like when you die behind cover and that really sucks? Well, it turns out that we're actually doing all of this data analysis, and here's our data. Like here, they would actually show graphs
That
and
is
the
cool.
yeah, and they would do these things where it's like,
That is
hey,
really
look,
cool,
this
yeah.
is what it takes to actually do the things you're asking for. It's not just like, hey, here's some fancy screenshots and some bullshit text from that a developer wrote. It's like, hey, look, here's like the white box view of the map update that we're currently working on, so you get a sense of how extensive it is.
Yeah, and for Battlefield, this just shows why you have the problem to fix the PC performance issues, for example.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, if
yeah,
it's really this thing of the information, then show some screenshots where you say, like, okay, this is the data, this is how much it
yeah,
takes. But if you would reduce it, it would help. And this is what we are working on. It's the same thing.
yeah,
And I would love that. And I think this is the biggest point here, that AAA studios need to open up. They need to they need, and also people want to learn. They want to see how
yeah,
it works. I mean, look at films. Why do we have behind the scenes movies? Why is everyone
yeah,
watching that? Because you want to see how how everything gets built. And
yeah. I
I
think
think this is something the gaming industry still needs to learn. Maybe to be a
yeah,
little bit more visual about the whole process and open up. And there should be always something they can show or not.
yeah. You should always have something you could show, and I think I'll end by saying like, listen, game
Yes, and
developers,
we have to end.
uh, players are eventually going to get smart enough to figure out why you don't tell them certain things, like about anti cheat or how long it takes to make a map. And when the answer internally is because if we told them, they would realize that we're basically, pulling the rug over their eyes and selling them loot boxes because of it, that is bad. And what's going to happen and what you're seeing with Battlefield and Halo and other live service games that have a lot of vitriol coming from the community is that players are starting to see the forest for the trees when it comes to these games. And they're realizing that the reason they play them isn't because they're good games, it's because there's always something new to do.
Yeah.
And when the core of your game isn't good and doesn't facilitate a fun experience, players are going to freak out. So the best thing you can do is just be player focused. Focus on making players have fun and enjoy your game first and foremost, and then worry about retention and then worry about cosmetics and all the live service stuff. Because if you don't get that stuff right, players are going to be way more heavily scrutinizing your game, and they're going to figure things out on their own, and they're going to come to their own assumptions. So if you can get ahead of the leakers and the data miners and the assumptions and say this is why X, Y, or Z is happening, and drop the secrecy, stop being afraid of like, you know letting the cat out of the bag. Like, I don't care if like Battlefield 2042's like narrative update where they add like a campaign or something is like coming out and there's a certain storyline. Like, be like, hey, listen, we got this cool storyline that we're going to launch next year for the game that's like, it's like got playable content and here's like a rough idea of what it'll offer. We're not really sure yet. It's still in development. There's none of that. And it's like, it's because they're
Mhm.
like, oh, if we tell the players, it won't be like the surprise element of the marketing won't have as big of an impact and we'll sell less copies of the game. It's like, of course, but like there's no players to play the game. So what does it even matter if you're secretive about the future? Like,
Yeah,
spill your
exactly.
guts,
Right
man.
now, why
And
and the thing is that the more you open up to and build up a bridge for engagement, the I mean, the easier and quicker you will build up a community again as well. Like
yeah,
it's something, yeah.
exactly.
So it's all connected in that way.